Hello, everyone. Well, the data says approximately 75% of women get hot flashes. And though HRT is their main go-to kind of a strategy, but today we wanted to talk about herbal medicine. How can herbal medicine help these women going through perimenopause if they're having all these symptoms of vasomotor symptoms? So that's why we have a medical herbalist with us, Hannah. Hannah is joining me from the UK, and she has been practicing for the last a decade or so. So thank you so much, Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. Well, it's this evening here. It's not this evening there. So yeah. So hot flushes is, well, we call them flushes in the UK, but you know what I mean, flashes in your world maybe. So probably about the number one most common, most talked about menopause symptom. And they can be triggered by lots of different things. So a lot of the women who come to my clinic say that it's triggered by certain foods, things like spicy foods, glasses of wine are common culprits as well, and stress. So if someone finds themselves in a stressful situation, then that can trigger a flush. And it can happen because you've got like a little thermostat in your brain called your hypothalamus. And that becomes very sensitive to changes in temperature and to stress. As we reach perimenopause. So it doesn't take much, even like a 0.5 degree change in temperature will be enough quite often to trigger a flush. So that's where we really need to be looking if we want to resolve hot flushes. The sensitivity of the hypothalamus comes from low estrogen. So it tends to be a symptom that we get later on in perimenopause. We tend to get higher estrogen levels. So earlier in perimenopause, your estrogen levels fluctuate, but they can go very high at certain points, sometimes 4 times as high as they would normally. So you get this kind of ever increasing amount of estrogen in peaks and troughs. And then towards the end, you get that drop off, which is what gives us the hot flushes. So there are lots of different things we can do with herbs and with medicinal foods as well to calm down those fluctuations and help prevent that from happening. So you've probably heard of phytoestrogens over there. Have you heard of those? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So what phytoestrogens are is basically substances we find in foods and herbs that mimic the effects of estrogen in the body. So they're like weak forms of estrogen. They're not as powerful as your own homemade version, but they're good enough to help calm these fluctuations down. Now, there's lots of different kinds of phytoestrogens, and what they actually, on balance, what they do is they have a normalizing effect on estrogen. So if your estrogen levels are too high, it will help to bring them down. If they're too low, it will help to raise them a little bit. So they're in a sort of fairly sensible range where you're not going to get these crazy symptoms that we get. So phytoestrogens you'll find in things like soy. Fermented soy is the best kind to have, which is the type that they use over in Asia. In Asia, they have much less problem with hot flushes than we do in the West. And we think it's partly to do with the amount of soy phytoestrogens that they have in the diet. Soy is a bit of a controversial one because it was the first crop to be genetically modified so that it could be sprayed with higher amounts of pesticide. And so nowadays, it's really quite difficult to get truly organic, clean soy. Also, if you have it unfermented, it can have quite a harsh impact on the body, particularly on the thyroid, which you don't really want. So if you can find good quality organic fermented soy in the form of something like miso, soy sauce, tempeh, or natto, certainly over here, you need to kind of look quite hard and go to specialist suppliers to get things like tempeh. But any kind of fermented soy product is good, and you can incorporate that into your food. A specific phytoestrogen for hot flushes, though, is sage. So it's the common sage that you might have in your garden. If you want to look up the Latin name, it's Salvia officinalis. There are hundreds of different kinds of sage now, so we just need to be specific in terms of which one, but it's your common green sage that you might have in the garden or be able to go and get from the herb and spice rack in the supermarket. So that's specific for hot flushes, and you can drink that as a tea quite safely, quite happily at home without any problem. If you're going to have it fresh from the garden, you just need a small handful per mugful of hot water. Make sure that you cover it whilst it's brewing. And then you can also have it as a dried herb. So I don't know how you source your dried herbs over there, whether you've got shops that will do it, or you buy it online, but just make sure you're using a reliable supplier, otherwise you could end up with anything. And again, you want about 2 heaped teaspoonfuls there to a mugful of water. Fennel is also slightly phytoestrogenic as well, and licorice. So you can probably get herbal teas with those in quite easily. Also, in terms of foods, you can have things like flax seeds. So there's studies that have shown that 40 grams of flaxseed a day drastically reduces hot flushes. And there are lifestyle things you can do as well. So I don't know what it's like over there, but over here, cold water swimming has become quite a thing. So yes, there's quite a move of women in particular who like to go jumping in lakes and rivers and things of a weekend and having a swim. And, you know, that's got a multitude of health benefits, one of which is that it helps to reduce hot flushes. So there's certainly lots of different options for you. Some women have concerns over phytoestrogens, particularly if they've had a history of cancer that's estrogen sensitive. So what we found over the last 25 years or so is that certain phytoestrogens can have a protective effect against things like breast cancer from coming back. So it's not the case that it's more likely to bring a breast cancer back. It will actually have a more protective effect. Obviously, if you can get hold of a herbalist or naturopath or a doctor who's trained in naturopathic medicine, it's best to consult with them first. But certainly in my world, we do treat these ladies who've had a history of cancer before, because many of them are really struggling with perimenopause and menopause, and they can't use HRT. It's not available to them over here for obvious reasons. So herbs are still an option. And we have got herbs that will influence hormone levels by working on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is where your hormones are made. So they influence that axis, but they are not phytoestrogenic themselves. So herbs like Vitex agnus castus will normalize progesterone levels. And occasionally that is implicated in hot flushes, particularly after menopause. If you're getting hot flushes after menopause, that's when you might use a herb like Vitex. But again, you need to be a little bit careful how you use certain herbs, and Vitex is one of them, because it's actually a really powerful herb. And if you get your dosage wrong, then it can cause problems for you. So although herbs on the whole are very safe, they're a natural form of medicine that we've all used all over the world since forever, you do still have to have some respect for them and some basic knowledge of what you're doing, particularly if you're taking other forms of medication as well.
All right, that's a lot of information. I know that you run a program, for menopausal women. Do you want to talk about, and you say that in 90 days, women will start feeling better. So I want you to talk a little bit about what you do for 90 days. That sounds magical. That's number one. And number two, should women start taking the herbs themselves, or they should consult someone? So do you want to comment on those two things?
I think I might be about to get invaded by my son, so do excuse me if I do, because he doesn't realize I'm on call. So my 90-day rescue program is a one-to-one program that is intensive over 90 days. And as the standard version, what we do is combine intensive herbal medicine with either health coaching or advanced hypnotherapy. So the idea is that the coaching and or hypnotherapy gets the basics of good health in place. So that's, making sure that you're nourishing yourself properly with healthy food. And if you need any supplements, you take supplements. You're getting a good night's sleep, because your body needs that chance to rest and replenish every night. And obviously we know that hormones can affect sleep as well. So we get the sleep under control, and then we make sure we're hydrating and exercising and putting everything in place. And this stuff has got a lot of weight behind it, a lot of scientific evidence that shows that not only are you getting everything right now to get your menopause under control, but in the long term as well. Things like exercise, for example, there's 11 studies that have shown that daily exercise reduces your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 45%, which is a massive percentage. So by getting all these in place and having me to be accountable to, that really sets you up for the rest of your life. On the herbal front, we obviously work in the background to rebalance the hormones. We work on liver clearance of hormones and the way that we're producing our own. And we look at the effects of stress upon hormone levels as well. But also we can treat specific symptoms like vaginal dryness, hot flushes, the migraines, the other many menopausal delights that we can get. And we've got different preparations that we can use for that. So normally we get around about an 80% improvement in symptoms within 3 months. As far as hot flushes go, I think my quickest has been 4 weeks to have them completely resolved. So yeah, it works, and it works really well. And there's also a self-care program that I'm about to launch too, where you can learn online. It's 8 modules, and it takes you through everything you need to know through all the different symptoms and how to kind of fix each symptom under your own steam. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This is a really good that, that's what we are advocating. Holistic therapies, herbal medicine, herbs. And I just want to add that all the women out there, they should not take the herbs by themselves. They should consult an expert. I'm not an expert, but an expert such as Hannah or someone else that they have close to them or even online before they start doing all these herbal factory inside them. That's all I wanted to mention.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Hannah. Any last
Thank
comments?
you. No, just that herbs are brilliant, and people don't realize how good they are and how powerful they can be. So yeah, definitely have a look at that as a treatment option if you're struggling with perimenopause, particularly if you don't feel inclined to take HRT. It really is a good viable option.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for supporting me. Thank you. Bye.